were playing under, I want to say the name Hocus Pocus, and yeah, I think it was Ann Wilson. Was that? Yeah, it was definitely Ann. Was at one of their shows, and like the two, it was like love at first sight sort of thing. The show was in Seattle, and so this dude was going back to Canada the same night, and so she just went with him, and then called up her sister like a couple years later and was like, "Yeah, like we're gonna start a band, like come play with us."
And that was the birth of Heart. And that's what we're
Mhm.
doing today, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the next episode of Vital.
Vital Stallions.
What up, everybody? That was some background and context setting up for this debut album of Heart. Dreamboat Annie is the name of it. And we are about to take a dive in.
Yeah, it's such a interesting album. Heart's debut album, 10 songs, 4 singles. So the release on this is very interesting, and it's always fun talking about this because you realize like the 70s were a different time, like no cell phones. Like, so just think about this. This album was released in Canada in 1975 and was not released in the US until a year later. So all these amazing songs were out there in the open in Canada. And like most people, unless you knew people who were Canadian or lived close to Canada, you had no idea this music existed. Just because the way information traveled, it was way different. Like now, some indie artist in Venezuela releases like their, electronic album. Like you can listen to it and like the second it's released. It's just way different. So yeah, this was released in 1975 in Canada, 1976 in the US. Yeah, like I said, 10 songs, 4 singles, and the total length of the album is 40 minutes and 2 seconds.
And it was released under Mushroom Records, which was a local label um, of someone who Klepp just described a little bit earlier. But yeah, so it was released under a very small label in 1975. It had 2 singles. The first single was How Deep It Goes, and the second one was Magic Man.
And then, yeah, so those 2 singles came out before the album was released, and then later on you had Crazy on You, and then Dreamboat Annie, which is very interesting because this song basically appears 3 times on the album. We will dive into that in a little bit. Yeah, going back to that story of Mushroom Records. So the way this band formed was kind of crazy. Um, so the band sort of formed in Seattle, also sort of formed in British Columbia. Um, so yeah, originally Steve Fossen, who's the bass player, and Roger Fisher, one of the guitar players, they started playing in, the Seattle area, whatever, like changed the name a few times. Eventually they settle on the name Hocus Pocus. Um, and so eventually Mike Fisher, who is Roger's brother, got drafted into the army. And so this is Vietnam War, like we're talking middle of the 70s or early 70s, I guess. And he didn't want to go. And so, yeah, Mike Fisher, Roger's brother, basically Ann Wilson saw him at like one of their their shows and just fell in love with this dude. Um, and so yeah, like she was in the audience, and Mike was in the audience too, watching his brother Roger, and so yeah, they just hit it off, and yeah, since Mike was fleeing the Vietnam draft, he just took off back to Canada after the show, and went with him. And so yeah, they lived together for a couple years, started playing a little music. And so eventually, Mike talked to Roger and was like, yo, like, Ann is really good. Like, I feel like you guys should start a band. And so Ann called up her sister, and yeah, the three of them started a band, brought in a gentleman named Brian Johnstone on drums. They still had Steve Fossen as well, and then another gentleman named John Hanna on keyboards. And so that was the original lineup.
Very nice. That's a interesting way to get an idea to start an album to avoid the war and to flee up to Canada.
Yeah,
Uh,
and actually that lineup I just gave you wasn't that the full lineup that ended up recording the Dreamboat Annie album. They ended up getting a new drummer in that time, but that lineup was just when Heart began.
Very nice. So yeah, like we said, this is gonna be their debut album. It features yep, 10 tracks, an even 10. Um, and it starts off, you want to dive into this thing? Number
Yeah,
one with an absolute ripper in Magic Man.
yeah. So this song, if you ever hear us in previous episodes, which if you've listened to a previous episode, you almost certainly have, you ever heard us mention a goo pit? Listen to this song and then you will understand what a goo pit is. So yeah, I mean, you just have like it's just a normal song at the beginning, and then probably what about like 2.5, 3 minutes in, like the goo pit just begins, and it just you have this driving bass, and like the guitar is just making wacky sounds, and you're in a trance, and it's like this for basically the rest of the song, and then at the very very end they do one more chorus and then wrap it up.
And this was one of the ones I knew pretty well off of this album. I mean, these songs and Heart in general were just on the radio again when we were kids a lot. Was always just like kind of the background music, the stuff that I would expect when I would turn on like I don't know 98.5 or something like that. But to like actually like give it a dive and a listen to in like this sense was awesome. A whole new perspective for this song and honestly this whole album and Heart in general. Um this one so it's 528 is what that album version is. And yeah, as Klopp said, it just takes you so deep. Um, and I love that about music. I love when it like just takes you off into just off the never land. And then you come back for that final chorus. Like it's such a build up. It's such an experiment as well because um I don't know there's levels to songwriting and whatnot. Like being able to write a song with like verse, chorus, and stuff is hard for majority of people. But then the empty
Hmm.
space in between and like what you decide to do of that roller coaster to take it along and take you to the end. That's what I don't know can like define you as like a good to a great artist. And man, this is a perfect example of just like you said, taking you to that goo pit and spinning you right back out to the final chorus perfectly to start the album.
Absolutely. And yeah, this song on a lot of radio stations does get neutered. The goo pit
Yeah.
that we crave so much, yeah, a lot of the times the radio will trim it down, and you'll get like maybe 30 seconds of it instead of 2 minutes of it.
I just
Uh,
don't get it. I don't get it. Just give me the song and I'll decide if I want to change it or not. There's other radio stations out there.
yeah,
Like I just give me the option to
that is
know
one
that,
thing I love about Sirius XM is they do not neuter the songs.
yeah,
Like
no.
you get Free Ride, you're getting the 8.5 minute version, not the 4.5 minute version.
Slow ride.
Yeah, yeah, Slow Ride, not Free
Mm,
Ride.
come on, you
Well, there
fire.
is a song called Free Ride, but that was the one I'm thinking of. Come on and take a free ride.
Oh man.
Yeah, so from there it goes into Dreamboat Annie parentheses Fantasy Child end parentheses. So this is very interesting. So this song basically appears on the album 3 times. So you have Dreamboat Annie Fantasy Child, regular Dreamboat Annie, which comes later in the album, and then Dreamboat Annie Reprise. So this one, Dreamboat Annie Fantasy Child, is just like all acoustic guitar. And one of the verses is omitted in this one. Um, but the first two verses, or like maybe the verse and the chorus, we will call it, in this song is the same in regular Dreamboat Annie and Dreamboat Annie Reprise. Um, yeah, so this is the one where they're just playing it along to an acoustic guitar. It's very short and yeah, just like a nice little. I mean, you just get slapped with magic, man. So it's a nice, like segue into the next song.
Yeah, no, it is interesting that there are three different Dreamboat Annie titles on here. And
Hmm.
yeah, this is the shortest one out of all three of those. And yeah, it's a great segue into that. Next one that we all know in Crazy on You. Another
And this is
one.
probably the most popular song off the album, I would say. I mean, I knew Magic Man and Crazy on You, but I feel like I hear Crazy on You on the radio a lot more. Another song that is neutered by the radio. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, that acoustic guitar intro, which has some great musicianship on it. They again they will trim it down to like the 10 to 15 seconds right before the electric guitar kicks in.
Dude, yeah, what is up with that? Like, that is my first note, is just guitar at the beginning is wild. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it has like a Latin vibe to it. The
Yeah.
the acoustic part, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It's yeah, and it does take a minute for the part that I just sang to come in. No, it is awesome with
And
the voice as well. It's just very dreamy. It reminds me of I can't think of her name. Oh, Bonnie Tyler. I don't know if she's from the 70s, maybe 80s as well, but I don't know, just that voice drags you in.
yeah, yeah, very powerful chorus. Let me go crazy, crazy on you.
Dude, no, yeah, it's a great one. Again, another one that I really just couldn't have had that appreciation for as a kid. And I'm like, I know the song already. I don't want to listen to it. Skip on Spotify. Well, back that ass up because it has a little bit more to offer when, again, listening a whole new perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like a good one, a good and number three. Then we head right to the longest song on the album in Soul of the Sea.
And I almost feel like this song is two songs in one. But yeah, very different. It's like a bit slower, a little bit more groovier. and it doesn't really pick up until like about halfway through the song, and that's sort of why I say it's like two songs in one, because once it picks up about halfway through, it almost feels like a different song, and then probably like the last and a half, it like teleports back to like that first song, but it's all one. It's all Soul of the Sea.
Soul of the Sea. I love the sea vibe. I love the boat vibe. I want to be a boatman.
Yeah, I think musically they do a very good job of just the way they have the guitars tuned and like the tone that they have coming out of it. It does give you like a very nautical, like I'm on the beach sort of feeling to it.
It does. Yeah, no, it's very well put together. And so to close out side one of the vinyl side of things, you get the name of the album, Dreamboat Annie. And this is the straight up one, no Fantasy Child or reprise.
And so, like I was saying before, lyrically, it is identical to Dreamboat Annie Fantasy Child, except for there is one more verse thrown in there. And I guess, unlike Dreamboat Annie Fantasy Child, this song has like full percussion and everything. So, yeah, you get like a more complete song, if you will. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if you're listening through the album just not knowing anything about it, you hear this and you're just like, where have I heard this before? This sounds very familiar. Like, oh wait, 2 tracks ago.
Yeah, it just keeps reappearing. It's interesting. So this one is 2 minutes and 2 seconds on the album.
And I think you get that extra, you know, 50 seconds or so because you get that extra verse.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that they just like throw it right back at you. They don't want you to forget about those dreamlike sea lyrics, that imagery,
Yeah.
backed with that folk guitar and a couple banjo slides.
hmm And yeah, so that, like you're saying, that song caps off side one. Get up, go over to the record player, flip her over, and then side two begins with White Lightning and Wine.
And that
Um,
song needs more cowbell.
yeah, no, that song is very interesting. It has like more of a bluesy feel, but it also like there's a lot of power chords in it, but yeah, not super distorted or anything. So yeah, it has like more of like a power blues feel to it.
Is it a cowbell? There's something in there that's just clanking throughout the whole song.
Very well could be.
Yeah. Who's ever playing that, that guy deserves a shout out on the Vinyl Stallion. So shout out to you.
Yeah, honestly, it's hard to tell because they sound very similar, but a lot of times a wood block will get misconstrued for a cowbell. I honestly don't know what he was using. Given that time era, I would tend to guess it's a cowbell. Uh,
Yeah, straight in the heart of the 70s.
yeah, so let's see. On that track, they had. Okay, Mike DeRozier was the drummer on that song. So he technically became a full-time member of the band like right before this album was released. So he is actually only on tracks 6 and 8. So he's on White Lightning and Wine, and Sing Child. Yeah, he isn't on most of the tracks because he replaced um he replaced the previous drummer who was like the original guy, like halfway through them recording the album. So they have multiple drummers on this album. So yeah, he is on track 6 and 8, and then they have Dave Wilson on a track. They have a gentleman named Duris Maxwell on a track. They have somebody named Kat Hendrixie on a few tracks. So it's, it's all over the place. Um, yeah, when they had originally started the band, um, yeah, I just talked about them, but they had a completely different drummer. Let me get his name here.
Get his name, Klepp. And I'm going to say this episode is brought to you by Glass Roots Coffee Company. Glass Roots Coffee from the Glass City, always organic,
Brian
always fresh.
Johnstone.
Brian Johnson. Brian
Yeah,
Johnstone drinks Glass Roots Coffee.
yes, he does. Get yourself a cup today.
Served from the Glass City. Check him out now. Awesome. Shout out to Brian. No, that's a good song to start that side. And then we go into the parentheses, love me like music, and parentheses, I'll be your song.
And this is a very cool song, sort of like a love song, if you will, a bit slower and more lyrically focused than some of the other songs.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mark I mark in my notes just the harmony that is just evident throughout kind of all of these tracks. And I think, yeah, so it's Ann Wilson is the lead on all the tracks, but then Nancy provides it on Crazy on You, and then uh tracks 5 through 10 as well. So it's just pretty evident. I again just recognize it specifically in this song. Um, but that's so big in music. And Two Sisters, I mean, come on, the chemistry. They were doing a happy birthday to each other growing up.
And so yeah, like I guess going back to Ann and Nancy Wilson. So these first 7 songs on the album were exclusively written by those two. It's not until you get to the next song, Sing Child, where other members of the band were involved in the writing process. And this is sort of why we include Heart with the women in music theme. Because even though several other members of the band, specifically Steve Fossen and Roger Fisher, like they had been playing together for years before Heart was formed, like really like they are sort of nothing without Ann and Nancy Wilson. Like those two make the band. Like that's what Heart is. Like they're the ones that are writing the music. They're the front women
Yeah,
of the band.
go look
Like
at the album
Heart
cover.
is Ann and Nancy Wilson. Like Steve Fossen and Roger Fisher are more like right place, right time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're the veins getting that heart pumping, but the heart comes from Ann and Nancy.
Yeah. So Sing Child, all
Ooh,
members of the band are credited for writing this song, and this song is probably my favorite off the album.
we're gonna agree on that one, man. This is a ripper of tone, and just that guitar riff is so good.
It is, and like on my notes when I was listening to this album, like what I had written down was Led Zeppelin vibes, and I mean, don't really have to say much more than that. That's the ultimate compliment.
And not just guitar, but like we were talking as well, like with the scat
Yeah,
singing,
yeah,
like
Robert Plant scat. Like that's the way that she's singing this song.
yeah, no, it's yeah, that's really, really fun and kind of just I don't know, all these albums that we've done so far just have like a song or two that just are very different but stick out and seem to be one of our favorites every time. And I think we found the winner here.
Yeah. And so this song goes, you know, then from Sing Child into How Deep It Goes. And How Deep It Goes is actually only written by Ann Wilson. So yeah, a little bit different. And How Deep It Goes, yeah, sort of has like a very acousticy vibe. And then the piano part in this song really gets me going too.
Yep, it's I'm in love with those number nines. Um, and this one sits right at number 9, and it leads us perfectly in for another deja vu session of Dreamboat Annie. Reprise.
Yeah, and so this one lyrically is the exact same as just regular Dreamboat Annie. But what makes us different is like towards the end of the song, you just have like sort of this full like orchestra kicking in and just adding this dramatic effect. That's why this one is the longest of the three. Yeah, the lyrics end at the same point that they end in regular Dreamboat Annie. You just have that instrumental at the end of it. It's very dramatic and epic. It's like a full orchestra.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's big, a great way to end the album. It is interesting. I mean, reprises and like stuff that usually makes an appearance usually are like little snippets and whatnot. But it's funny to think that this is actually the longest version of all three of them instead of the actual song. Like it's not
Hmm.
really a reprise. You're kind of building on the actual song.
Yeah, is it true?
Man,
I mean, I had to call it something, I guess.
it should have been called like Fantasy Adult or something.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of the
it
fantasy child.
it's grown up. Our big tugboat.
Yeah, yeah,
we've
pretty much.
we've docked our dreamboat and come to the end of this 1975 album.
Yeah, yeah. 40 minutes and 2 seconds, so not a super long listen, but a good one.
Again, just opened my mind with Heart that I had no idea about. Again, always heard about them. Never really gave them a chance outside of the radio and going crazy, crazy on you. Like that was really about it. And Magic Man as well. Was Magic Man in like Rock Band or something? Like one of
It
the
was. It wasn't on 2 or 3 because those were the two that I had, but I never had the
I mean,
original.
like Barracuda was on a Guitar Hero. I know. I kept playing that. And I was like, this is the most just like dun 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 dun. I mean,
Yeah, Barracuda is probably their most popular song, I would say.
Barracuda. Yeah, no, it's
Ooh-cha,
it's good, but
Barracuda.
I mean, it's cool to know that they have more kind of just goop it stuff, different stuff. Very musically talented as well. Um, yeah, great choice. This was good. This was a good one for again Women's History Year, Women's History Month, Women's History Life. We're celebrating it, and
Hmm.
shout out to the Wilson sisters.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, as you can tell, it's March 31st. So we're at the end of March and we still have 2 more albums to review for our women in music theme. But guess what? It's always Women's Month. So just because the calendar is going to turn over to April doesn't mean that we can't finish our Women in Music series.
And
So,
continue it onward, onward, more, more, more. Um, but yeah, we will continue it into April, into May, always. So yeah, surprise.
all right. So for our next two, we have Tina Turner and we have Florence and the Machine. So which one's it going to be?
So with the final one, we are gonna do some Tina Turner.
Oh, what's love got to do with it?
Mamma mia. And want to know what? I made a mistake about this album a little bit earlier on that Klepp did some research on. We're going to pivot. We're going to use our pivot foot. No traveling here called. We're still good. But we'll be doing so. It's not so. Klepp, explain to the people what you found out.
Okay, so the song, basically, when we picked Tina Turner, we were looking for the album that had "What's Love Got to Do with It." Fair, right? So naturally, you would think that that song is off the album "What's Love Got to Do with It," and it is, but that is actually a soundtrack album to the biography movie called "What's Love Got to Do with It." And there are some original songs on that, but most of that album is re-recordings of older songs and covers. So what we feel is the right album to actually review is What's Love Got to Do with It originally came out on, and that is the album Private Dancer from 1984.
So we're bumping up about a decade or so, and we'll be moving right into it with Private Dancer on the next episode of Vinyl Stallions. Lock
And
it in.
and this will be a very interesting conversation because there are like 17 releases of this album with different track listings, different orders of the tracks, and like different stuff thrown in. So it will be fun to talk about that. And I'm not really sure why it's like that, but for whatever reason it is.
It's bonkers. It's bonkers. But if you are still here and listening to us at the end of this episode on March 31st, just know, hopefully at midnight on Eastern time, the Red Hot Chili Peppers will be dropping their new album. And this is our official announcement that if it is a reasonable hour for us East Coast folks to stay up and listen to it, we'll be doing a live stream of the album, listening to it, breaking it down for you. So stay tuned for that. What would be tonight if you're listening to this. But if
Yep.
not, we'll still do it. We just might not do it that night because your boy needs my beauty sleep.
Yep.
But yeah, besides that, shout out to the Wilsons. Wilson!
Yeah. Yep. Ann and Nancy Wilson, women in music.
That's all, folks. My name is Bruce.
I'm Klepp.
And this has been another episode of
Vinyl Stallions.